Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hey, glad to be here.
We are really glad you were here with us today, too, because we are tackling a subject that, I'll be honest, it sounds like the title of a textbook you'd use to prop up a wobbly table.
Yeah, it really does.
The official topic we're looking at today is Principles of Regional Analysis and Spatial Classification.
Which doesn't exactly scream edge-of-your-seat entertainment right out of the gate.
No, not at all. And this is but once we started coming to the articles and the research notes for this one, I realized this is actually like learning the code in the Matrix,
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
right? It's not about memorizing capitals or exports. It's about decoding how we organize the chaos of the human experience. We are really looking at the invisible lines that decide where here ends and there begins.
That is honestly the perfect way to frame it, because if you look at the world without these tools, it's just infinite noise.
Just chaos.
Exactly. It's way too much data. Whether you are a military strategist or, a supply chain manager for Amazon or just someone trying to understand the evening news,
Okay.
you have to chunk the world
I
down.
have to categorize it.
Right. You have to. And that is what regional analysis actually is. It's a survival mechanism for our brains to manage reality.
And I think that brings us to the core concept right at the top of the stack here,
Mm.
the idea of the region itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to start off by shattering a misconception that, frankly, I think a lot of us have.
Yeah.
When I look at a map and I see a border or a colored shape, I assume it's a fact, like a mountain or a river. It's just naturally occurring.
Right. And the sources hit hard on this immediately. Regions are constructs. They are tools.
We made them up.
In a sense, yes, we did. The Earth didn't come printed with dotted lines around the Midwest or the Middle East. We drew those lines.
So they aren't real.
Well, they're real because we use them, but we as observers create these regions to study specific phenomena. A region is simply a geographical unit that is characterized by a unifying principle.
Okay.
But the catch is, we get to choose the principle. We can draw the lines based on physical landforms, sure, but we can also draw them based on religion or trade routes or how people vote, even which sports team they root for.
Wow. Okay, so if I'm understanding the mission of this deep dive correctly, it's to give you, the listener, the ability to see those layers, to look at a map and ask, okay, who drew these lines and why did they choose these specific criteria?
Exactly. Once you understand the three main frameworks, what geographers actually call the big three types of regions, you start seeing the friction points in the world.
Right.
You realize that a massive amount of conflict happens because different groups of people are using entirely different maps over the exact same piece of ground.
Okay, let's get into those big three then. The research categorizes them as formal, functional, and perceptual regions.
Let's start with the one that feels the most scientific.
The formal region. The notes also refer to this one as a uniform or homogeneous region.
Yeah, and this is the most data-driven type. A formal region is an area defined by a shared, measurable trait that is present throughout the entire area.
Uniformity.
Uniformity is the key word here. If you are inside the line, you have the trait. If you are outside the line, you don't.
Okay, but in the real world, total uniformity is pretty rare, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing is perfectly identical everywhere.
True. It's usually about predominance. But think about the physical world first to get a baseline. The Sahara Desert is a classic formal region.
Right.
What defines it?
Sand, heat, lack of rain.
Precisely. Climate and terrain. If you are standing in the sand dunes, you are in the region. If you walk south until it turns into the grassy Sahel and then eventually the tropical savanna, you have physically left the formal region of the Sahara.
Because the traits changed.
Exactly. You can measure it with a rain gauge. The boundary is relatively clear based on hard data.
The Florida Everglades was another example in the notes, a specific swampy ecosystem. But we don't just do this with dirt and weather, do we? We do it with people, too.
Oh, we do it constantly with culture. We might define a formal region in East Asia based on religion, for instance.
Yep.
We look at the map and say, in these areas, the majority of the population practices Buddhism. That creates a formal culture region. Or look at Latin America.
It's primarily linguistic, right?
Right.
Spanish and Portuguese.
Right. It's a massive geographic area, but it has that unifying thread of Romance languages. But here is a nuance that the sources point out, which I think is just crucial. Geographers rarely rely on just one single trait.
They stack them.
They stack them.
Let's unpack that.
Yeah.
Because the world is usually way more complex than just, French speakers.
Exactly. If you just define a region as French-speaking, that is huge. That includes France, parts of Belgium, Quebec, huge chunks of West Africa, parts of the Caribbean.
It's too broad.
It's way too scattered to be useful for most types of analysis. So you stack traits, you look for an area that speaks French and is Catholic and has an industrialized economy.
And suddenly your region shrinks down to something much more specific, like France itself.
The more traits you stack, the more cohesive and specific that formal region becomes.
Now, there is one type of formal region that we interact with every single day, and I honestly don't think I ever thought of it as formal until I read this material.
Political borders.
Yes, political borders.
They are the ultimate formal region, the state of California, the Republic of France, even a local county. These are defined by a very specific, highly measurable trait whose laws apply.
It's totally binary. You are either in California, subject to California law, or you are not.
Right.
You can't be kind of in California legally.
Correct. There is no ambiguity there. And that is why governments love formal regions so much. They make taxation, policing, and census taking very easy. Everyone inside the box is the same, legally speaking.
That is the definition of uniformity.
Exactly.
Okay, so formal is about being something, being sandy, being French-speaking, being a citizen. The second category seems totally different. The functional region.
Also called the nodal region.
Yeah, nodal. Because this one implies movement. It's not about static traits at all. It's about a system.
Yes. A functional region is defined by a central point, the node, and how the surrounding area connects to it. It's defined by activity, by interaction.
So it's not about what the area is, it's about what the area does.
Perfectly said.
The source material uses an example here that I think acts as just a perfect mental anchor. It calls it the pizza principle.
I love that one.
I love this because it takes high-level geography and grounds it in, Friday night dinner.
It really is the best way to visualize it. So imagine a pizza shop. That shop is your node. It's the center of gravity. Now, that shop has a delivery radius. They draw a circle on the map and say, we deliver 5 miles in any direction.
And that circle on the map, the delivery zone, that's the functional region.
Exactly. Now, think about the people inside that circle. Do they all speak the same language?
Probably not.
Do they all have the same religion? Are they all the same income level?
In a city, they could be completely different from one street to the next.
Right. They aren't uniform like in a formal region. The only thing that unifies them is that they can all get a pepperoni pizza from that specific node.
Yeah.
The region exists entirely because of the connection.
And this brings in that concept of distance decay, which sounds like a sci-fi movie title, but in this context, it basically explains why your pizza is cold.
It does. Distance decay just means the connection gets weaker the further you get from the node.
Right.
If you live across the street from the pizza place, you get hot pizza instantly. High interaction. But if you live on the very edge of the delivery line, the pizza is lukewarm, it takes an hour to get there, and you might be tempted to just order from a different node that's closer to you.
The friction of distance degrades the relationship.
Exactly.
So applying this to the real world, outside of food delivery, this is basically how we understand cities.
Precisely. Take the Chicago metropolitan area. The Loop, downtown Chicago, is the node. But the functional region extends way out into the suburbs, into Indiana and Wisconsin even. Why?
Because people commute. They flow into the node for jobs, for baseball games, for museums.
And information flows out. They watch the Chicago news stations, they read the Chicago Tribune. That web of movement commuters going in, media coming out, creates the functional region.
That makes so much sense.
And think about this. If the city of Chicago suddenly disappeared, if the node vanished, the region would collapse.
Wow. It's ephemeral in a way that formal regions aren't. Because, if everyone leaves the Sahara, it's still a desert.
Right.
But if everyone stops going to a specific school, the school district, which is a functional region, it ceases to matter. It's gone.
Exactly. Functional regions are about systems, economic systems, transportation systems. It's about the flow of goods, people, and ideas.
Okay, so we have formal, which is traits, and functional, which is systems. Now we get to the third one. And this is where things get slippery. Perceptual regions.
Also known as vernacular regions.
The notes describe this as folk geography. It's geography that exists in our heads.
This is definitely the most subjective category, but often it's the most powerful.
Really?
Oh, yeah. There is no hard data for this. You can't use a thermometer or a census to find the border. A perceptual region is defined by how people feel about a place or how they identify with it.
It's a vibe check.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It is a geographic vibe check.
The classic example the sources use here is the South in the United States. And I feel like everyone knows when they are in the South. You can feel the shift.
You really can. You see the sweet tea, you hear the accent, maybe you see more Baptist churches. There is a sense of shared history and hospitality.
Yeah.
But here's the test. Give 10 people a map and a Sharpie and ask them to draw a hard line around the South.
You'll get 10 different maps.
Exactly, 10 different maps.
Because is Florida in the South?
Geographically, yes. Culturally, a lot of people would say South Florida is its own thing. More Caribbean or a northeastern transplant vibe.
What about Texas? Is it the South or is it the Southwest?
Or Kentucky. Is it the Midwest or the South? It really depends on who you ask.
Because the region isn't defined by a law or a climate. It's defined by identity.
Right. The Midwest is another huge one. It implies a certain set of values. Hard work, the heartland, maybe a specific agricultural heritage. But the actual boundaries are incredibly fluid.
The research mentions the Middle East as a global example of this. We use that term constantly on the news, conflict in the Middle East. But that's a perceptual label, isn't it?
It is. And it's a label largely created by Western powers looking from the outside in.
East of where, right?
Exactly, east of Europe. But where does it actually end? Does it include Egypt in North Africa? Most people say yes. Does it go all the way to Pakistan? Some say yes, some say no. It changes based on the context of the conversation.
So a skeptic might ask, why do geographers even bother studying this? If these lines are just in our heads, if they are imaginary, isn't it less real than the other two?
No, and here's why. Imaginary lines drive real-world behavior. If people believe they are part of a region, if they identify as Southern or Catalan or Middle Eastern, that belief shapes how they vote, what they buy, and who they are willing to fight. Perceptual regions are completely real because they feel real to the people living inside them.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And it leads us perfectly into the next section of the research, which is scale. Because we don't just look at one of these regions at a time. We are constantly zooming in and out.
Right. Analysis happens at all different levels. At a local scale, you might look at a city's entertainment district. That's a very small functional region.
And then you zoom out to the national scale. The notes mention comparing wine-growing regions versus wheat-growing regions in France.
Right, which is formal agricultural analysis.
And then global, studying sub-Saharan Africa as a cultural unit.
Exactly.
But here is the aha moment for me. This is what all this terminology has been leading up to. These three types of regions, formal, functional, perceptual, they don't exist in isolation. They're all stacked on top of each other in the exact same physical space.
They're layers.
They're overlays. And when those layers don't align, when the functional map doesn't match the formal map, that is where you get tension. That is where you get war.
Yes. That is the fundamental disconnect that drives so much geopolitics.
The source material gives a specific, pretty heavy example of this, Iraq. And I think walking through this really clarified the whole concept for me.
It's a tragic but absolutely perfect example of spatial mismatch.
So let's break down the layers of Iraq. Layer one is the political map.
Okay, look at Iraq as a state. On a map, it is one single functional region. Baghdad is the node.
Right.
The government, the laws, the currency, the military command, it all radiates out from Baghdad to the national borders. On paper, it is one functional unit.
One big pizza delivery zone, to reuse the analogy.
Exactly. But now, peel that back and look at the formal regions, specifically looking at the cultural and ethnic layer beneath it. Is it one uniform unit?
Definitely not. The research highlights three distinct blocks.
Right. You have the Kurds in the north, distinct language, distinct culture. You have the Sunni Arabs in the center and west, and you have the Shia Arabs in the south.
So these are three separate formal regions. They have different traits. They are not uniform with each other at all.
But they're all trapped inside one functional political boundary. And the node Baghdad has historically been controlled by one group trying to force the others to comply.
So the friction comes because the functional region, the country itself, is fighting against the formal regions, the people's actual identities.
Exactly. The lines on the political map cut right across the lines on the culture map. Governing becomes a total nightmare because the system doesn't fit the traits. The formal regions don't want to be in that specific functional region.
This really changes how you read news. It's not just, people fighting over nothing. It's a structural failure of regional analysis. The boundaries were drawn wrong.
And that brings us right to the concept of contested boundaries. We tend to think of borders as these hard lines, like a physical fence. But in culture, boundaries are almost always transitional.
The notes call them fuzzy.
Right, fuzzy boundaries. You don't step across a line and suddenly every single person changes language. It blends.
Yeah.
But when politics tries to force a hard line over a fuzzy transition or groups different people together who don't see themselves as a unit, the boundary becomes contested.
And when the pressure gets too high, the map actually breaks. The case study in the text for this is Sudan.
Yes, this is the ultimate example of the map having to adapt to reality.
So set the scene for us here. This is Sudan prior to 2011.
Geographically, at that time, it was the largest country in Africa. It was one massive functional region governed from a node in Khartoum in the north.
But the formal layers were completely at odds with that.
Total mismatch. The north was a formal region defined largely by Arab culture and Islam. The south was a formal region defined by Black African heritage and Christian or animist beliefs.
So you essentially have a massive cultural fault line running right through the middle of the political container.
And the node in the north tried to impose its laws, specifically Sharia law, on the south. They essentially tried to turn a functional relationship into a formal uniformity.
They wanted the South to be just like the North.
Right. And the South rejected it. That structural mismatch caused decades of horrific civil war.
And eventually, looking at it through our lens today, the pizza principle won out. The people at the very edge of the delivery zone said, "We don't want your pizza anymore. We're opening our own shop."
That is literally what happened. In 2011, they voted for independence. They created a new node, which is Juba. And they created a brand new functional region, South Sudan.
So the map physically changed to align with the culture.
We moved from one dysfunctional region to two functional regions that actually matched the formal identities of the populations living there.
This really highlights the idea of fluidity that the research emphasizes. Because I think we crave permanence in maps. We want the globe to stay the same. We learn it in third grade and we think, okay, that's done.
Yeah.
But you're saying that's not how it works.
It never has been. Regions are fluid. They change as economies shift, as populations migrate, and as identities evolve. Perceptual regions change the fastest. What one generation considers the West might change entirely for the next.
Right.
But even the hard political lines, the formal regions, they break and reform when the pressure between the layers becomes too great.
It makes you realize that regional analysis isn't just about naming capitals or memorizing exports.
No, that's just trivia. Regional analysis is about asking why. Why is there conflict in this valley? Why is this city booming while that one over there is dying? The answer is almost always found in how these layers, formal, functional, and perceptual, are interacting with each other.
It's about seeing the invisible architecture of society.
Well put. It's about seeing the scaffolding.
So let's bring this all home for everyone listening. We've decoded the big three. We have formal regions, which are the areas defined by facts and traits, like the Everglades or a French-speaking zone.
It's uniform.
We have functional regions, the systems defined by connection to a central node, like
Yeah.
a subway map or a pizza delivery zone.
The connected.
And we have perceptual regions, the areas defined by how we feel and identify, like the South or the Middle East.
Be imagined.
And the really big takeaway is that these aren't separate maps. They are stacked. And when they don't line up like we saw in Iraq and the old Sudan, that is where history happens.
Exactly. The map is not the territory. The map is just our human attempt to understand the territory. And sometimes we draw it wrong.
That is a very powerful thought to leave on. But before we go, I want to leave you, our listener, with a question to carry with you. We looked at how the map of Sudan physically broke because the political lines didn't match the cultural ones.
Right.
So look at the world map today. Look at the headlines. How many of the countries that we treat as permanent, unchangeable facts are actually just like Sudan in 2010?
It's a great question.
How many are just functional shells trying to hold together distinct formal regions that have absolutely nothing in common? And where is the next line waiting to be redrawn?
That is the question that keeps geopolitical analysts up at night.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Keep questioning the map. We will see you next time.